Good evening, friends, family, lunatics everywhere. We're back with you for another episode of the Blue Ribbon Podcast. I'm Chris, your host, and we're going to have a conversation tonight with Steve Vest, broker, and with Wolfgang Wendland, who is a former owner operator and truck driver. This spurred from a kind of a conversation that they were having back and forth through some TikTok videos, and I went, "Hey, why don't we all just sit down and have a conversation?" Because in a lot of ways, social media posts are a lot like texting, right? You get into it with somebody, and your text message, you're not reading what they're saying. You're thinking about your next response. And so I really wanted us to have just a conversation. We'll talk about our experience, look at the market. There's plenty to talk about because there's been lots of stuff happening here lately. So Steve's been on the show before. So Wolfgang, why don't you take about 3 minutes, 4 minutes, and just kind of give us a quick history of you in the industry and where you're at.
Yeah, of course. So for me personally, trucking was really always sort of it was a very deliberate decision when I became a truck driver. I'll put it that way. Some kids wanted to grow up and be doctors and lawyers, and for whatever twisted reason, I chose to want to grow up and be a truck driver. Hindsight being 2020, maybe I should have been a doctor or a lawyer, but nonetheless, I became a truck driver. And the way that I like to put it is, I quickly realized a few things that really don't take decades of experience to realize, and those are some of the gaping holes that we have in this industry. And the first thing for me was this fact that what I'll say is I graduated the truck driving school I went to, and it was drilled through my head. You're a professional driver, right? Professionalism is key. You have a standard to maintain, and that's true, right? We should all feel that way. Um, and then I went to a larger company, Land Air Transport, before they got bought out by Covenant. They were a mid-sized company, and I worked for them. And during the orientation process there as a brand new driver, it was drilled through my head. The same ethos was drilled through my head about you need to be a professional. You have a standard to maintain, and learning all the regulations and all this different stuff. I very much so was overwhelmed in a good way to see that, okay, there's more to this than just holding the steering wheel. But then when I got out onto the road as a solo driver for my very first load, I was at the old TA south of Walton, Kentucky, off 75. They've torn it down and rebuilt it now. But I pulled in there. It was my first ever night solo, and I watched this monstrosity of a truck pull in, 5 different colors, duct tape holding it together. The guy pulls in, hits a couple people as he's backing in, tries to leave the scene of the accident, rips his truck to shreds, getting in this bind as he's trying to, make a U-turn. And I got out like everybody else to go be nosy. And, I saw this guy hop out that had no business driving a truck and, couldn't speak English. And I thought to myself, how does this happen? This must be an anomaly, right? To me, this was akin to like an airline pilot seeing another pilot taxiing through the grass and bumping stuff with his wings. Like, you just don't see that happening, because at this point I thought that we all maintain this professional ethos, or at least the majority of us. So I
Mm-hmm.
thought what I was seeing was an actual anomaly. I was like, this is going to be on the news tomorrow. This is crazy. Look at this truck driver. And then as the weeks turned into months, months turned into years, I realized that this is just a common occurrence in the trucking industry, as well as some other issues like the truck parking crisis. And I got more into the freight market as time progressed, wanting to become an owner operator, learning more about that. And I just very much so saw all these issues piling up. And I thought some of these are just gaping wounds in this industry. And if we don't do something to fix them, it'll lead to what I think would be the demise of the trucking industry. Not necessarily saying there wouldn't be trucks, but to a point where I think it just would not be feasible for the average American to pursue it as a viable career or as a viable business venture for an owner operator. I compartmentalized this for a while, and I'm talking like quite a few years. And then I got to a point where I very much so viewed silence as complacency, right? I mean, if we see issues and we don't talk about them, we don't at least do something to get a conversation started about them, I think that's akin to complacency. And so I believe it was April of 2025, I took to TikTok to start talking about some of these issues. And the videos did very well, surprisingly to me. There were a lot of people that saw them, a lot of truck drivers, and they're like, hey, I feel the same way. I can relate with what this guy's saying. So I just kind of kept up posting videos, and that's kind of what got us to the point where Steve and I were having a little back and forth conversation, and here we are today. And hopefully we'll have a nice, fruitful discussion and talk about, who controls the freight market, because that's certainly one of the issues that over the course of my diving into these topics, I've come to be somewhat passionate about. So yeah, it's sort of a brief rundown of what's got me from point A to point B.
What
Yeah,
year? What
yeah,
year did you start?
Do what now?
What year did you start in the industry?
2019.
2019. Okay. All right. Go ahead, Steve. Just a little quick introduction for anybody
Okay.
who didn't met you before.
Yeah, no, I'm Steve Vest. I'm the owner and founder of Nationwide Equipment Transportation. 20 years in the business for freight broking for myself, and I've been in the industry for 10 years before that in air freight and working for another smaller broker. So my parents owned a trucking company when I was a kid. They had 13 trucks. I've seen it all. I've pretty much done all of the stuff in the industry now from both sides of the desk. And so I see both sides. And so Wolfgang and I have had conversations, and I think they've been well received because we do need to have that kind of dialogue back and forth from broker side and also carrier side, because I'm actually trying to help some of the carriers, smaller carriers, get direct shippers and use our TMS platform and try to help them go after shippers and help us go after shippers as well as a smaller broker to try to take some of the business from some of the bigger guys that are making billions. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the conversation, and Chris will lead us on the way, I hope.
So, Steve, here's a question I'm going to throw at you, because in all of this turmoil that I see between brokers and carriers, the customer gets left out of the equation. And it kind of makes me sometimes wonder, why are carriers not more angry with customers, right? Because they're the downward pressure, right? They have a need that needs met, and they want to pay nothing for it, which I don't fault them for, right? Everybody's got a bottom line, everybody's got to manage their expenses. But I'm just wondering what you think about how the customers, the shippers, get left out of. It's almost like they get a pass. All of the frustration and anger goes toward the broker, but why is the customer and the shippers not getting more heat?
Well, I think for, obviously Wolfgang's been in since 2018 or 2019. And so right when COVID happened, that's when a lot of people jumped in that haven't been in this industry as you and I have for a really long time, Chris. And so I think at the end of the day, they don't realize that the customers ultimately are the ones that are paying us to go out and find carriers for them. And we get paid a commission to do that, obviously. But I think to your point, the reason why the shippers don't get as much pushback from the carriers is because the carriers stopped going after direct shippers, right? So the ones that do business with direct shippers really understand kind of the pressure that they're under, right? Like they really do hold the keys to the castle. From my perspective, we are up against other brokers at times, and even some direct shipper or carrier relationships at times. Mostly it's against other brokers because those are the people that want to use a broker to help facilitate their business. And I can tell you, when I give a client a quote that I feel is fair to both the driver, carrier, myself, and the shipper, let's say 1250 out of Florida or something that's well over $1 a mile, but I feel like it's fair based on the distance. My customers come back and say, you know what, I'm only willing to pay $950 because they know the market just as well as I know the market as far as outbound Florida, and they know that they can get that rate from a driver. And so the carriers, I think all the technology that we have today, unfortunately, has leveled the playing field from a shipper to a broker to a carrier. And that rule of, oh, driver carriers are getting screwed and brokers are making 40 or 50%, that's such a non-factor for us because we all know the real numbers. We've been doing it a long time, 15% margin on average for everybody. There are brokers that will do more because carriers will haul for less, or they are charging, really overcharging their clients because their clients, the shippers, don't know the market, right? So I think that's where you see the 40 for 50% margins are the ones, government contracts, a lot of those are overcharged. And we need to do better at that because we're overcharging the government, we're overcharging ourselves as consumers. But I think the biggest thing is carriers that complain the most are the ones that don't have direct shippers and use the load boards exclusively. So they don't feel the pressure from the shippers like brokers and other carriers that work direct.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of my position. I mean, I'm leased to a carrier, I'm a big one, right? Leased to Landstar. So I have this network of salespeople at my disposal that are going out and knocking on the doors and making the phone calls and making that connection for me so that I don't have to. And I would that's one thing that I have. It kind of baffles me because at least I understand my limitations in that I am not a good salesman. I am not someone that has the personality to go knock on doors and make phone calls. Because I have this face, right? And it's not
Come on, Chris. Don't sell
it's
yourself
not
short.
it's not engaging. I've got a little RBF going on, right? But I would rather take a whipping than make a sales call. Like, I'm really good at what I do, and I can just be excellent at what I do, but I accept my limitation as a salesman.
And I think, just to interrupt you there, Chris, but I think that is ultimately what carriers need to realize is that they're giving up. And I love when you say that, because the carriers that use the load boards, that use brokers, are giving up that sales position that they have to pay a salary, a bonus, insurance, 401k, whatever. They're giving up that control for that 15%. And if they would just look at that and change that mindset to the carriers that do that, they know and they accept it and they move with it, because they know what you talk about, the cost per mile. What do I need to do to make money in this business? So,
right. So, Wolfgang, you've been in 5 or 6 years, right? And so Steve and I have a little perspective from the good old days.
Sure.
Okay?
it was the good old days too.
Now listen, somebody tells me they want to get back to the good old days of trucking, and I'm like, wait a minute, do you want me to go back to no cell phone, no iPad, no GPS, no satellite? I have to stand in a phone room and smoke so thick you can't see through, to hold one phone to each ear and have somebody tell me to call back in 2 hours. Y'all can take a good old shove, okay?
Yeah.
But what we did see was, I started in 97, okay? And, eBay comes along and Amazon comes along, and the consumer explosion that happens, because so much of what we did before that was just it was feeding the industrial base. The consumer kind of got what they got based on where they lived. If they had a Kmart, or they had a Dollar General, or they had a mom and pop grocery store, then we have this consumer explosion. Then we get just-in-time freight, where we've turned the trucks into rolling warehouses, where the truck backs up to the dock, the product hits the assembly line. We built this well-oiled machine that y'all destroyed in 20 minutes over toilet paper in 2020, but never mind. We've built this arc and this curve, and then 2020 happens, and it's basically blown it up. So you coming into the industry at that point, I guess I'm going to ask, how much attention have you paid to the historical context of how the market shifted from 1960 to 2020?
Yeah. So coming in, as someone with like very minimal experience, obviously in 2020, like a year of experience, it was pretty evident that I was in the midst of an unprecedented freight market. I remember going to work. I left the larger carrier I was at, went to work for a small carrier, and this was when the whole essential products exemption was out, because when the U.S. government needs their slaves, we come to the rescue. And any other time of the year, we're just a disposable asset for them. But so they had the whole the whole essential thing going on, right? And I just remember, even at that point, not really understanding quite the freight market itself yet, seeing tons and tons and tons of people flooding into the market. Currently existing carriers were flooding their fleets with more trucks. They were hiring out their rear ends. I was seeing guys all the time at truck stops that were like, yeah, I just went out basically and bought a truck, not really much experience. I got a CDL, but the money's here. And I do think that set an unrealistic, expectation for some people, thinking that was going to, and really, honestly, I mean, it doesn't take a ton of knowledge of the industry to know that when you flood the market with trucks, you're going to inevitably get a drop in freight rates, because you're going to have a surplus of trucks on the road. And that's where we're at now. I mean, I think what we're seeing right now is very much so still sort of the burn off period from that whole just swath of people that flooded to the industry in 2020 to try to take. And truck drivers are really not good about keeping their mouths shut, to be totally honest with you. Hey, look at me, look how much money I'm making. Trucking's great. Why don't you come try to, dip your toes in the water? And it just created a pretty unrealistic, expectation for a lot of people. But kind of back to your question, as far as, from the 60s, the 70s, moving to the 80s and 90s, there's a lot that happened during that time frame. You had the whole deregulation period and stuff. And the one thing that because I try to pick the brains of people like yourself, Chris, a lot, and other people, the one common thing that I've heard is the market always shifts. The market always has shifted. There's always highs, there's always lows. They seem to come in 4 to 5 year periods. And so, what I would say is, I think, from 2020, that was an unprecedented economic situation, both in and out of trucking. I think it's created sort of just an absolute storm of variables for people who were already in the industry, and people like me who were trying to kind of get into the owner operating side of things as we were experiencing this upside freight market post COVID, right?
Right.
Which could have very well, perhaps, and I'll openly make the concession, given a much more unrealistic expectation of how the freight market typically is, right? It seems a lot worse than maybe it typically is. Like you said, kind of right before COVID, it was kind of at a peak, a nice comfortable peak, and then it kind of got to where it's at now. So,
Well, what I think, after COVID, and we still are feeling this effect, and you mentioned the toilet paper thing, Chris, but like so many businesses went out of business during that time, warehouse businesses that people relied on for those return loads or those loads that they expected from a certain area because they knew that shipper and they knew that they could go to that area and get a load back home or whatever. Half of those people went out of business. And so now the whole supply chain is disrupted and people had to start adjusting and trying to find new shippers. And so you have people like Wolfgang that came in and jumped in. And so the big legacy carriers that were cash cows that literally just, could throw cash wherever they wanted. They had all the money coming in. Margins were super tight, but they could just cash flow the hell out of it. Well, all these other players came in and started nibbling at their toes and started taking a little bit here, a little bit there. And so then those big carriers started pushing back. And so that's where we're at, right? We're at a complete just annihilation of what we were used to. As far as now, the average haul is 500 miles. Even Wolfgang has mentioned he's like goes to New York and comes back home every other night. That's what drivers want today, is they want that regional route that they can be home more. And so now all these warehouses are popping up within 500-mile radiuses because of the Amazon effect. And so we are losing that long haul thing. And now with the rail possible mergers and all of this, and maybe the rail gets better and more efficient, it's a reset completely to what Chris and I will remember from 1999 to 2001 when 9/11 happened. I was in air freight. We had to shut down all our planes for a week. Well, what did people realize? I don't need to air freight that. Really, I could truck it and get it there in 1 or 2 days. That's when that reset happened. So the air freight market disappeared in 2001 almost, and we lost a lot of our business. We ended up having to sell out to UPS, and we're seeing that same reset now with the trucking side of things and then the rail. So in the next year or two, if this merger does go through and the rail becomes more efficient, then even more truckload stuff's going to go on the rail, and we're going to see the 500-mile regional. So you better be really good at that part as you move forward as a trucker, in my opinion, as far as what I see in the next year or two.
Yeah,
Well,
I can go ahead, Chris.
So, in almost 30 years, the biggest thing that I have learned is no matter who you are, if you're a company driver and owner operator, you need a particular set of skills, right? You need to specialize yourself somehow. Tanker, flatbed, reefer, white glove van service, household goods. Like everybody talks about how terrible the training is, and it is. It's atrocious. And it's just as bad now as it was in 1997. Okay. It's here's 3 or 4, here's 3 weeks in a school. Here's 3 weeks in a training. We wish you the best of luck. If you figure it out, you'll figure it out. If not, we'll replace we'll get one that looks just like you, and they'll get in that truck and they'll go do it. But if you want access to the money, your life has to be based on that customer service and putting the needs of others ahead of your own. That's a 100% recipe for success as an employee or as a business owner. But unfortunately, American society has not done anything to help us because we're all broke. We don't know how to save money. We've now come to the point that Walmart grocery pickup and DoorDash has become the staple of society. Oh, well, I have to DoorDash. No, you don't. Take your ass to the grocery store and buy some groceries and learn how to cook. And there people all over TikTok and YouTube that will teach you how to cook. You do not have to DoorDash.
I've never DoorDashed in my life.
I did it once at a track meet, and it was awesome because I didn't have to go outside the gate, and I got
Right.
at Taco Bell, right?
Yeah.
It's great when we have the amazing technology that we have. I drove trucks when there was no cell phones. And if so, I needed to call somebody, I had to go find a payphone. I had to find a place that a truck would fit, and I would have to go find a payphone. And that was when cell phones came along. Man, they were still stupid expensive, but it was a major lifestyle upgrade for drivers. And so we got to this place now where we're kind of spoiled. And I'm personally at a place, I mean, Landstar BCOs are spoiled rotten because our rates are so high compared to the market that if a Landstar BCO, and I've seen a few of them, have gone out and, well, I'll just go get my own authority. Okay, buddy. I wish you the best of luck. Right? Because we're in this little system where really the agents have done an amazing job of keeping our rates high. And so you have people right now at Landstar, I see them on the Facebook groups all the time complaining about how low the rates are. Well, have you looked at the market to see, so the shift has to be, I think if we want to get back to something, we've got to get back to the point of understanding where the need in the market comes from, and that's the consumer level. All right. I went to a restaurant the other day, and we had an amazing experience with our server. She was awesome. Now, I didn't write any reviews about how awesome she was. But if I went there and that experience was terrible, the first thing I'm going to do is go to Google reviews and talk about how terrible this person was. So as human beings, we have an expectation of what the service is supposed to be to me. I better, don't let my drink get empty. If I hire you to come do my roof, you better show up on the day that you said you're going to, you better get it done in the time I wanted it done. If I'm going to hire a plumber, if I'm going to hire anybody, I have an expectation level as the person paying the bill. But for some reason I don't want to say it's only trucking, but it seems like we have a big problem of people having the paper upside down. You're the service provider. You're the one that needs, if you want someone to remember you, knock their socks off.
Yeah.
It's amazing service.
I think owner operators, sorry to interrupt you there, but owner operators fail to remember that the owner word, right? They just don't understand what owning a company is and how hard it is to be an owner of anything. And it doesn't just happen overnight. I think during COVID, everybody jumped in and it was so easy to go to the load board and get money and get paid and make decent money that, like you mentioned, that the riches are in the niches and you have to have some experience to get paid for those and learn that. And it takes time. People are so impatient and they think, oh, I'm just going to get rich right away. When I get this truck, I'm just going to turn the keys and people are going to give me freight. It doesn't matter. I have a truck. They should just give me freight. That's not how this works. It's still a relationship game. You still have to go out and grease some wheels and, kiss some ass every once in a while to get your foot in the door at certain places, whether that's a direct shipper or a broker. And so I'm trying to teach these carriers how to do that and then give them the platform to be able to run their company with that. But it's amazing to me just how many owner operators fail to realize they're not an employee anymore and it's just not going to be handed to them.
Right? One thing that shocked me was how low the bar is to impress, like, for an example, a broker, because I think it's important to build relationships, obviously, with customers, try to go get those direct shipper contracts. But also, I said this in a video recently, if you find a broker Not all brokers are the same, right? There are some brokers who have sort of a hodgepodge of good paying customers, bad paying customers, and some brokers just have really good paying customers. And like Chris touched on in the beginning of this, so many people, it is an unfathomable level of ignorance for people to think that the brokers are the main problem when in fact the brokers can only work with whatever their customer is willing to pay. And I promise everybody listening, if they think the brokers don't have a vested interest in trying to get the customers to pay more, that's more money in their pocket, right? I'm sure Steve, you can attest to that. You're not going to try to bid your rate down from your customers, right? You're going to try to bid it on an upward trajectory because it's more money for your business and more money for the carriers.
Brokers made more money after COVID than we've ever made before because the
Right.
margins were higher because the rates were higher. So if we're
Sure.
getting paid on a margin, 15% margin of 1,000 is less than 15% at 2,000. So yeah, we want the
Absolutely.
rates to be higher.
And Steve, I have a question from your position as a broker, because I've done the exercise in my mind. Okay, I have an incredible management team here. I've got amazing drivers and I got good equipment. Great. So I don't have a belief that I could not go into the open market and do well and kind of get back to what we're doing at Landstar. But what we're doing at Landstar is pretty significant. It's way above market. And number one, I know that if I left Landstar, there's going to be a huge dip in revenue that we could work back up and maybe even surpass. Okay. But I was doing this kind of thought exercise and I thought, okay, I'm going to put on my salesman hat. I'm going to go knock on doors. I'm going to make phone calls. I got 8 trucks, but let's say I had 50. How am I, as a single truck operator, going to be able to go to a customer and sign them up on a contract and say, yeah, you got 2 loads a week, you got 5 loads a week, you got whatever. Yeah, I'll do that for you. That's a marriage. That is a commitment. That's ball and chain. I mean, to me, it seems very counterintuitive that a single truck operator can go to a customer and only have that one truck. Well, what if I get sick, or what if the truck breaks down? And Francisco is in the comment section on TikTok. He's a carrier. He's got some trucks. He also has a broker authority. He's been able to leverage that where he has the customer and say, well, if I can't send a truck, I have the ability to find one for you. It just seems like the step is like the dock is here and the boat is like over here. Like, I can't imagine trying to make that sales call versus if I was a Landstar agent. Okay. Hey, I'm Chris with Landstar. I'd like to get your business. Well, how many trucks do you have? Oh, I got 8,500. Well, that's easy. Yeah. I'll find 1 or 2 out of the 8,500 that I can confidently sell you and say, I will have a truck for you.
That's why it's so hard to get into this market right now for that exact reason, because how long ago did Landstar start? I mean, 50 years ago or whatever, like they've been around forever. So it took a long time to build from 80 to now. So it's hard to replace something like that. And so with 1 truck or 2 truck, yes, it is very difficult, but not impossible. There are shippers out there. And again, it depends on the owner operator and what their lifestyle they want. Like some owner operators love the load board because it's something different and they get to go different places and they get to haul different things. And I get that because it's kind of cool. You get to do different things. I wouldn't want to do what a FedEx driver does and drive the same route overnight and be home. I don't want to do the same thing over and over and over and over again. So like I would like to hop around. And when I had the box truck, we did that. We'd go to Minnesota, we'd go to Dallas, go to St. Louis. We'd stay within a 500-mile radius of Kansas City, but it was always something different, right? And if we wanted to, we could go to New York City for a day or Florida for the week or whatever. But so yeah, I mean, I think the biggest challenge is deciding your business model and getting into it when you should, right? I think some people jump into it just thinking I had a truck, I'm going to make money. Where when I got the box truck, the only reason I got the box truck is because I had a client that we were brokering freight for, right? that the box trucks kept showing up without the blankets, without the straps, without the E-track. Like they kept showing up without the right stuff, even though we told them this is what you needed. They would continually show up. So I was like, screw this. I went out and got a box truck. And so then we did that for 2.5 years and did very well. But you have to meet a need. You have to, I've seen other truck drivers on TikTok. One guy failed pretty badly at the van stuff, and he went to a local customer and found out he needed some hopper bottom work. He went out and got a hopper bottom trailer and did well with that. You have to pivot sometimes. And so if that avenue is not working as a business owner, you got to be thinking like, okay, what can I do to be successful? And I can put a business plan together to make anybody successful. I can do that with one truck. I can do it with 50. I can do it with Landstar's trucks. It's just finding the right people to do business with. And
If I could, this really kind of aligns with a lot of, at least the point I try to get across when I do make videos about this on my page. It's hard to talk about it because as Chris, he does God's work when it comes to calling these imbeciles out, but you've got a syndicate of people on TikTok and on social media, and I don't want to sound like I'm advocating for these fools, the guys who sit like a dog at the bottom of the dinner table hoping for the master to drop scraps, the $5 a mile group. I don't associate with those guys. And I think like Chris says a lot, a lot of these people are just looking for an out for their lack of experience and their failures that are their own responsibility. But I do want to acknowledge kind of what Chris is saying. And I think, not Steve yourself personally, but there is sort of this stigma from the broker side of things where they look at somebody like maybe a one-man band owner operator that's trying to get into the business. Of course, they're going to make mistakes, but maybe they do have a good knowledge of the industry. Maybe they do have a good knowledge of the market. They know their cost per mile. But for all of the reasons that, Chris just brought up, it is, I'm not going to say impossible, but it is, he said the docks over here, the boats here. I mean, like I can relate to that. It's very much so true. And the problem that I have is when I've had this conversation with a lot of brokers, they seem to not really understand that it is so hard right now to compete as even a small carrier with maybe a handful of trucks, but let alone a sole owner operator with both the brokers and the larger carriers who can come in. And the other thing is, they have trailers that they can pre-stage at a customer's facility. That's a huge negotiating fact for a lot of customers. Oh, we can drop our trailers at your place and you guys can preload them and stuff. And so that's really just the crux of what I'm talking about. Is it's not impossible. I just wish more people could acknowledge from the broker side that it is very, very hard if you're not leased on to a safety network like Landstar, which I think is a great option, by the way, to succeed in 2025. And really just what I want to break down is this idea that, Steve, I've not heard you say this, but a lot of brokers do, which is that if you're failing as a small single owner operator, it's because you're not going out, you're not putting in the work, you're not selling. There's a particular broker on TikTok who I won't name that would be distasteful, but I've actually had to block the account. We were having a dialogue at some point and she just straight up said, if you're failing as a small carrier, it's because you're lazy and you don't want to go sell. And that really was where I was trying to hone in. It's not that you maybe don't want to sell, maybe you're trying to sell. It's who has the higher negotiating ground to the customer, right? We're all trying to appease to the customer and provide a service, and you just don't have hardly any negotiating ground in this current market as a sole owner operator or a small fleet owner.
I mean, I feel that as a small broker, right? Like I'm a small player in a big pond. I mean, I'm not $1 billion brokerage. I mean, a multi-million dollar brokerage, but not $1 billion brokerage. So
Sure.
I have the same battles. But for Chris's point, like how can you do something about that? And so me as a broker, what I've done is said, okay, I'm going to partner with 1, 2, 3 truck owner operators and allow them to grow their business because they don't want to open a brokerage. They don't want to do that. Just like I don't want to own a trucking company. So we've partnered with several small companies and taught them how to go out and get direct shippers and say, hey, I only have 1 truck now, but I'm going to grow to 10 and have a business plan and show the person when you're in front of them how you're going to get to 10. But while I'm getting to 10, I'm going to work with Steve and his brokerage and you're going to work with him.
Okay.
And that's what we have built. So we're built that network. We have our tech platform already built for that because we want to work with the small owner operators and tell them like, hey, we want to grow your company. We want to help you grow your company. If that company does mainly van freight, but they have flatbed freight and they have LTL freight and they have Hawaii, Alaska, Puerto Rico, whatever, we'll do all that other stuff. And you as the owner operator get a commission. So we pay those owner operators a commission for all the loads that we handle. that they bring to the table so they can go out and sell. And there's a guy on TikTok that's hit me up, several of them, that now have their brochures printed out, their carrier packets, their business cards. They're going out door to door, and they're going to get told 99 times out of 100 no, just like I do. But that one is going to be the one that they're going to get direct shipping contracts with them, and then we're going to handle the overflow, and then they're going to get a percentage of the commission that we make on that. So that's how we are helping the small owner operators. And I think that's really the best thing that we can do as a broker, is partner with them, because I want them to succeed. I want them to be in business, because if without them, I don't have a business. And I also, kind of selfishly, my parents had 10 trucks at one time, and my father passed away and they sold the company before I got to take it over. But, I see the benefit of helping them grow their companies. And with a shipper, if they walk in and they say the right things and they learn how to present themselves, it's an easy sell. Just like I said, I can go in and do it. Anybody can do it if they have the confidence. And unfortunately, I'll say this: you shouldn't start a business unless you can somewhat sell. And that's just it doesn't matter if you're a restaurant owner, whatever, like, don't start a business unless you can sell to some degree. Like Starving Artist is an example. Like they're great artists, but they can't sell. I actually was at an event tonight. It was an art event. Some of my buddies, they're there. They have metal that they weld together into art. It's beautiful. But the two guys can't sell. They don't even have prices on their stuff. They don't even have a sign that says this stuff's for sale. They just, hey, this is cool. We're going to put it out there because it's art. Like, are you going to sell anything tonight? What's the price of this? Oh, I don't know. I'm like, okay, then what are you here for? But
there was a great line from Robert Kiyosaki. You know who he is? Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It's a great book. And he said he's sitting somewhere with this lady, and she's asking him questions, and he could tell that she didn't think much of him as a writer. Right. And he points to the book and he goes, I want you to notice that it says best selling author, not best writing author, and that jumped out to me, because a good salesperson is worth their weight in gold. And that's why sales is the highest worth, profession of all of them. The good salespeople make their money. I want to go to what you were talking about, the fundamentals, because what we're trying to do here at Blue Ribbon is I want to create those businesses that are strong enough, that have that undergirding, so that they have something to sell, right? There's so many, like, I'm not going to say that factoring is evil or leasing trucks is evil. I don't believe that it has some malice to it. I don't think it's wise. I don't think giving away a portion of your revenue to finance your cash flow is any different than putting it on high interest credit cards. But we'll look at one and go, oh man, I wouldn't use high interest credit cards, but you're using factoring. Or leasing trucks and having these $500 a week, $1,000 a week truck payments. I want to build those the businesses on that solid foundation, so that if they want to build a carrier, not just a one truck operation, if they want to build a 5, 10, 50, 100 truck carrier, you're going to have to start with your feet on solid ground. And that comes down to basic business principles: customer service, risk management, cash flow, and a place like Landstar or any other, good carrier that's got a nice owner operator package is going to give you some infrastructure that will help insulate you from crazy insurance costs. It will help insulate you from crazy claims. It will help insulate you from screwing up your permitting and compliance and billing. Like, let someone else who's already worked out all those bugs. We scan paperwork on Tuesday, I get paid on Wednesday. All my driver has to do is scan the damn paperwork on time and we get paid. That has so much value over factoring or waiting 6 months to get paid. The communication, the relationship building, the risk management, the customer service. You can go to a carrier and it allows you to make those mistakes that you're going to make. And that's one thing that I've noticed about that crowd you were talking about, Wolfgang. I don't see very many of them talking about the mistakes that they've made. They're all
Never.
pure as the driven snow. It's
Never.
everybody else. Well, anybody, Steve can tell you, I can tell you, any successful business or business owner has made some really dumb decisions and has had to eat a lot of nastiness, and swallow pride, and suffer. Y'all want to talk about suffering because you're truck drivers. Okay. I mean, listen, I drove trucks for 20 years. It's got its uncomfortable moments, but when I suffered and almost lost this house that I'm sitting in, y'all don't want that. You don't want to experience that. And I don't wish that for you. But I'm also not going to hide from you the reality that when you make dumb decisions, they'll come and get your house. They'll come and get it. Right? That we're not going to hide that reality from people, because if I blow smoke up your rear end, to tell you, oh, honey, it's going to be great. You just go get that big Peterbilt that you've always wanted, and everything will be fine. No, it won't. It won't be all fine. And all of the people that are leading you down this path that says, oh man, it's easy. Just go get your authority. It's not easy. It's not easy.
It's the same thing about being a broker. There's a lot of people on TikTok right now selling courses and saying how easy it is to be a broker, and you're going to make all this money, and they're showing all this flashy stuff. And then people have came and worked for us because they see that and they've taken classes and then want to come work for me. And I'm like, okay, I'll give you a shot. And then 6 months, a year from now, they haven't even closed one shipper. And it's because it's not easy. Like being a business owner is just not easy, period. It doesn't matter what you do.
I think a good point to bring up, and I was actually planning on making a video about this. I reserved to say this for this conversation, but I think one thing that I've certainly realized, because I have no problem making concessions about my failures, and myself, and I think a lot of owner operators, we have this we're going to do it ourselves mentality. Now, I was leased onto a carrier, but I think I think an important point to make here is like the system Steve has integrated that he's talking about, and Chris, you being a BCO with Landstar. If you're an owner operator, your truck, if you have a fleet, all your trucks under you, that you should have a baseline of what it costs per mile minimum, all expenses included, to operate that truck. Anything that you make over that threshold, that is the money that you're actually earning. So whether you're working with a system like Steve has, whether you're working as a BCO with Landstar, whether you're leased onto a carrier, who cares? As long as your truck or your trucks under you are grossing over your threshold of what you need to make minimum and making a certain amount over that. And listen, if someone says, hey, we can't go over that, okay, I don't need to take your load, right? And I think it's very important to note when you're a business owner and you run a business, you have to be able to adapt that business to shifts in the market that you're in, no matter what market you're in. And I think right now we're seeing a shift with owner operators where, because of reasons that Chris talked about and that I touched on, it's just really, I don't think it's very feasible to try to become a one-man band, dive right into this with no experience, or minimal experience, and think that you're going to be able to succeed. Who cares? Lease onto a carrier, lease onto somewhere like Landstar, work with a program like Steve is offering. And, as long as you are making a certain amount over your minimum cost per mile, who cares? I guess that's really just kind of where I'm at with it now. Like,
yeah,
I think that any job that you do, jumping in without experience is a bad idea. Being an owner of a company and not having experience is a bad idea. Being a freight broker with no experience is a bad idea. You need to go learn first underneath somebody else. And then if you want to go out on your own, that's another thing. But you can be successful in this game with one truck. You really honestly can. Chris, when I talk to people and I tell them what you talk about with your cost per mile is, right? Like you mentioned, like you don't want to lease. I get that. For me, I'm a risk averse person. So like I'm going to lease because if the truck breaks down, I want to get another one and I keep moving because I know at the end of the month, this is my fixed cost. I never have to worry about a breakdown. So there's one way to skin a cat. And as long as you build in the business to cover that and you make enough to cover that, then you're going to be successful. And if you don't, then you won't. Same thing in your situation. If you don't haul enough loads, if you don't have good enough drivers and you're not getting a good enough rate from Landstar, you're going to fail. It doesn't matter where you're at or how you do it, but if you put the work in, you can be successful based on your business plan. So there's some people on TikTok I was talking to today because I talked about backhaul, and people hate that word, but me and Chris have talked about this a little bit before, is that, you know, if I'm taking a load from Kansas City to Maine and I'm getting paid $3.50 a mile, you know, that's a pretty good rate, and I can deadhead back to maybe a better market. But if I find a load out of Maine right there nearby that's paying me $1.10 a mile, I'm going to take it, because that extra $1,000 at the end of the year, if I do that every week, that's 52 grand. And that's a business revenue, you know, thing. And I know truck drivers say maintenance and all that. I get that. Trust me, I understand that. But at the end of the day, you know, there's many different ways to skin a cat, which my cat's right here being a pain in the butt. But there's plenty of different ways to skin a cat in business, right? And I'm not going to judge anybody on the way they run their business. It's just, can you make money doing it? Have you put the thought and have a plan in action to make money doing it? If you just bought a truck and thought, I'm going to go get freight, that's not a plan. That's just not a solid business plan. Like, I've got this big truck payment. How am I going to break that down per mile or per week or per month to make enough revenue to cover my expenses and have money at the end of the day to put back for a rainy day, to pay me, to pay myself, to put money in retirement, you know, all of those things. That's got to be your plan from day one. It can't be, I'm going to go buy. I see so many people, oh my God, that like, I just got my freight brokerage. I just opened my company. What do I do? How do I get customers? I'm like, you didn't think about that before? Or, oh, I just went and bought a truck and this is my first truck. Well, what do I do now? You should have thought about that 6 months ago. Because when I started my own freight brokerage company, it took me 6 months of planning to get to the point of where I actually wanted to step out and do it on my own. I didn't just one day decide, hey, I'm going to be a freight broker today, you know?
So I saw something, you'll love this. So I was going through the face bag, and a Landstar agent posted, hey, I need a van. And it was New York to Texas for $3,800. And every comment was ridicule, laughing. Oh, that's $2.17 a mile. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I took, and she put her agent code. So I went over into the Landstar system and I searched her agent code. She had a $21 and something a mile load posted. That was a double drop. You know, it was probably oversized, but she had a $21 a mile load posted on the board. And I made a little comment and I said, I hope she's taking notes of the people here in the comment section so they'll never have access to her $20 a mile loads. Right? Because y'all are so quick to bust on her for this $2.17 a mile, $3,800 load. I would do that load. I would 100% take that load, pick up on Friday and deliver on Monday. You damn right. I'd pick that shit up and I would run it all weekend, and I would have $3,800 in my pocket at the end. And now I only need another $3,200 for the next 5 days to meet my goal. Like,
but you had the right word there, is you have a goal per week of what you want to make.
Yeah.
So many drivers don't have that number in mind, that I'm going to do everything it takes. I don't care if it makes me run 10 local loads for the next 3 days, or if I'm doing 2 long hauls. Like, have a plan.
I've got an amazing dispatcher, and she's an elephant killer, right? She loves going after those big loads. And I said, here's what I need you to understand. Sometimes I would rather have 4 $2,500 loads than one $10,000. I like the $10,000 loads. They're awesome. They're impressive. They look great on a spreadsheet. But sometimes those 4 $2,500 loads are better for cash flow, right? They're better as long as you don't have to sit in a truck stop for 11 days because somebody didn't read a permit and hit a bridge. You know, like the 10,000, the 12,000, the 20,000, those are great when they come, but it's not an automatic yes. You know, the first time Phil came to me one day and a few months ago and this summer, and he was like, well, we got an opportunity to do this $29,000 load. I'm like, great. Let me grab this guy real quick, because I had to do the math. I didn't just go.
He still uses that old one. He doesn't even use the one on the computer, guys.
Right. Yeah, you know, it's great to go, oh man, that's $12 a mile. It's this, that, and the other. But I had to do the math, because You take that 29,000 and you spread it over 3 or 4 weeks. Well, it all of a sudden doesn't provide the same amount of cash flow. And cash is king in this business. You have to have money in order to make it to the next week. So and you talk about the pivot. When I came to work for Larry in 2018, I said, "Hey man, what do you think about platform freight?" He says, "Absolutely not. Never, ever in a million years will my trucks do platform freight." Well, now we've only got one door swinger left, because we went, okay, well, not only are the rates better and we can run less miles to achieve the same goals, but we can also take somebody with zero experience and in that same 18 months, turn them into a level 3 operator. And you think about becoming a Landstar BCO on day one, and you can call and haul a 13 wide load that pays $10 a mile, versus somebody coming in off the street going, "Hey, where's my settlement at?" Right. So the preparation, I feel like, and which is why I say when I interview someone, I say, "Well, now why is it you want to start a business?" Huh? Why do you want to start a business? Oh, freedom. And I say, from what? What is it exactly you want to be free from? Do you want to be free from working all the time? Well, don't buy a truck. Do you want to be free from being on duty 24/7, 365? Don't buy a truck. Do you want to be free from risk and headache and stress? Well, don't buy a truck, right?
Dude, I'm gonna use that on my next sales agent that wants to come work for me.
There's an incredible amount of freedom and liberty that comes from being self-employed. Okay, not taking that away from you, but you got to make sure you understand what it is you're free from and what you're free to. That's what I'm about, the freedom to, not the freedom from, because the freedom from, you're going to be chasing the snowball. The freedom to, you're going to be pushing it. Right. And so we take business very seriously. And that's why I think we get a little twisted up in the shorts when people start wanting to get $5 a mile. And I'm like, "Do you have a business?" "No, I'm a company driver." Shut up.
Yeah, we very much so live in a get rich quick culture. I mean, it seems like at least 8 out of 10 people who attempt to start a business, they do so with one goal in mind, and that is to make money and work less. I've talked to an innumerable amount of people who have said to me, "Hey, look, I want to be self-employed so that I can work less and make more." For whatever reason, people have that false dichotomy planted
Yep.
in their mind, and I don't know why. Because my experience, you're on call 24/7. When you come home with the truck and trailer, you're not just punching out and going to hang out with the family. You're having to fix stuff on the truck that you've noticed is, an issue, but you maybe didn't have time to fix it while you're on the road. And it's and like you said, it can be very freeing in certain aspects, but very rarely do you find people who want to actually pursue a career to grow knowledge and to actually run a business. The passion is not running the business. The passion is trying to get rich quick and dip out and just make money and not have to work. And you'll never be able to achieve that.
Yeah, 100%. Very wise word, man.
So we got about 7 minutes left. Steve, I hadn't fully grasped what you were building until you said that, and it really has sparked in me the idea that carriers and brokers should be working together, right? The customer is our goal. All right. If I don't have the direct relationship, I need to go find somebody that does, right? And I'm going to work with them. And then I have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Maybe I should use one twice as much as I do the other, and find people that are really good at their craft. And if you want to understand what they're doing, went to a Landstar corporate event in Louisiana, and this dude raises his hand, corporate panel. "Now, how can us BCOs become an agent?" And I'm thinking, I immediately thought, this guy thinks the agents are sitting in their pajamas, not doing anything. And I'm out there doing all this work as this truck driver. I need to be an agent. I never once got from that guy, all the sales work that I have to do and all the infrastructure that I have to build and all of the relationships that I have to build. Like, I don't see that as a step down or up or you know, to start an agency. Like I'm just gonna make phone calls and people are gonna be like, yes, come and get my freight.
Right. And well, some guy in the comments said that what I'm doing is actually double brokering or co-brokering, and that's incorrect. What I'm trying to do is get rid of that so that carriers don't have to double broker and co-broker, because I'm actually billing the customer directly. The carrier's billing their customer directly. We're just working together to build their business bigger, to build our business, but also to lower the overall cost of the transportation to the shipper.
Right.
At the end of the day, if I take 2 carriers to a shipper that does 100 loads a month, and I say, I've got you 2 carriers, they're pre-qualified, they can do 50% of your freight, and I'll do the other 50%, then the customer's saving 15% on that 50% of their loads. And so we're partnering together with carriers to go together into the shippers and say, here's what we're doing. He doesn't want to be a broker. I don't want to be a carrier, but we're going to do it the right way. And we're going to bill you for the loads we do, and he's going to bill you for the loads that he does. And then we're all going to be happy, right? We're all going to get the job done at the end of the day. So it's definitely not double brokering or co-brokering, but it's a way for us to help smaller players grow with the shippers and, grow their book of business, and also help us cover the other sides of the loads. It's really working out well for like the 40-foot hotshot flatbed guys that work with a shipper that also have dry van stuff, right? But they can't do the dry van stuff. So we do the dry van stuff, and the flatbed hotshot guy that brought them to us get a commission on all that freight. And so they don't need to open a brokerage anymore. They just get paid a commission on the LTL. We do all the work. We take care of all the carrier vetting and do all of that. Same thing if it's all van and they have a flatbed load every once in a while, or they have a shipment to Canada, or maybe some area of the country that carrier doesn't want to go to, right? That's the one biggest problem that I think carriers don't want to get direct shippers for, is because they're going to send them to Maine and they don't want to go to Maine, or they don't want to go to the Northwest, right? We'll handle those loads perfectly fine. We'll find a carrier that needs to get there, and they'll do the load and they'll get a commission on it. So
we need to have a whole other podcast, because it would take a while, on holding shippers accountable for
Absolutely.
the double brokering problems.
100%.
Right.
100%.
The stolen loads too. I mean, the stolen load starts with them.
How about y'all get up off your ass and go outside and find out who's really there?
Right. 100%.
Yeah.
And I don't understand like $1 million loads disappearing. I'm like, bro, if I was a shipper and it was $1 million load, I would either be riding in the truck with the guy or following him from point A to point B. Like, I mean, I don't get it. Like that to me just baffles my mind. If we have a big high value load, like we're making sure the tracking's on, we're making sure everything's working 100%. We're doing all of that to make sure that the customer's freight stayed. We've never had a load stolen. We haven't had a load double brokered in 4 years, because we don't let the carriers that are doing the bad stuff in the front door. Like, we literally know when they call in now, we can see this phone number is associated with 25. We've had one that was one phone number was associated with 50 MC numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And we send that all to the carrier. We send that all to the shippers, tell the shippers, make sure you're checking all this stuff. Like when they come in the door, all our shippers know, like, you better be checking.
Did you see the one where the guy was trying to ship that square body Chevrolet, and he was like, he knew something smelled wrong and realized and shut it down, you know? But I'm like, right there's the example. The shipper can stop a lot of this if they'll just verify the identity of who's coming to get the load.
100%.
100%,
We're building in some stuff onto our app right now that's going to be facial recognition. When the driver shows up, they will have to check in with the shipper, and it'll be a facial recognition or a driver's license, like Clear ID type of scenario, so that when the driver's there, he has to check in, and that will prevent that.
Do you think that maybe some shippers are like, oh, it's insured?
Yep.
And
the guy on the dock doesn't care. He gets paid $20 an hour, and he goes home at 8 to 5, and it's not the owners, right? So most of my customers are small to medium-sized companies that might have 5 to 10, maybe 50 employees. So they care, right? They're knowing what comes in and out of their doors every day. I'm not working with Fortune 500s where they have thousands of loads going out every day. So that's one of the differences of why we're able to do what we're able to do versus some of these big guys. But $1 billion broker just had 10 loads stolen in June. And I'm like, how are you guys, what are we doing?
Yeah, for sure.
Well, guys, I appreciate you coming on here. It was a good conversation. We should
I learned a lot from both of you guys. I appreciate it.
Same, yeah.
Guys, business is about serving people. Okay. If you want to be in business, the whole core of it is serving people. Okay. And if you don't have that direct customer, guess who your customer is? That guy right there on the bottom of the screen.
And then we are also trying to serve in the carrier side, right? Like my
right.
customer service to the carriers are just as important as to my shippers. So I treat them with respect. They treat me with respect. And we all have to do both of that from both
Yeah,
sides.
no, absolutely. I think from a carrier's perspective too, I agree 100%. This is a mutually beneficial deal for all of us. It should be. And for whatever reason, some people don't like to hear the word mutually beneficial. They want me beneficial and nobody else beneficial. But yeah, I've learned a lot myself, and I think Steve's platform that he's building is great. I hope the word gets out more with that, and we can see a bit of unity restored between the carriers and the brokers, because we can both benefit from working with each other if we do it the right way and we stop causing this divide between each other. So.
Absolutely.
100%.
All right, guys, we appreciate you being here. I'll be back with you next Friday at 8. I don't know what we're going to talk about, but we'll figure out something. Maybe I'll get Steve back and we'll just go scorched earth on shippers that don't vet people.
How they could do it better for sure.
Yeah. And